So imagine this, you're 3 days into a site prep job. You gave the customer a number. They paid the deposit. You mobilized your equipment. The truck started rolling. And somewhere around day 2, you realized the fill dirt estimate you built your whole quote around isn't going to hold. Not because the labor was wrong, not because you miscounted equipment days or hours, but because you underestimated how much dirt you actually needed to hit the right pad elevation. And now you're standing on that job site watching truck after truck pull in, dump their loads, doing math in your head that doesn't add up, knowing you've got a change order conversation coming that nobody wants to have. That didn't happen to me, but I want you to sit with that feeling for a second, because it almost could have early on. And for some contractors and some owner builders, managing their own site prep, some version of that story is very real. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how fill dirt estimating works, why they go wrong, and what the real math looks like on a desert house pad, so you don't get blindsided. Hi, I'm Mark with AccuDirt. Let's get into it. The scenario I just described isn't invented out of thin air. The specific mistake at the center of all this, underestimating fill quantity because of compaction shrinkage, is one of the most common and costly errors I see on residential site prep jobs out there. And it catches people kind of off guard because it sounds technical, but it's actually really simple once someone explains it to you. So when fill dirt gets compacted, when you run a machine over it in lifts, add a little moisture and squeeze it down, it shrinks, typically 15 to 20% in our desert conditions. That means if your modeler estimate says you need a certain volume of dirt to raise your pad to the target elevation height, you have to order more than that volume because it'll shrink. Because what you compact down is less than what you put in. If you don't build that shrinkage factor into your estimate from the beginning, you're going to run short. And running short mid-job means calling for another delivery or several, potentially delaying your compaction sequence, and having a conversation about cost overruns that puts stress on a relationship that didn't need it. As an owner-builder, it puts stress on you all the way around. That's the thing I want you to understand before we get into the numbers. So fill dirt math it's not complicated, but it has to be done right, and it has to be done before the first truck even shows up or is scheduled. Not while you're standing on the lot watching all of it unfold. That's a bad feeling. So here's how it actually works. Fill dirt on a residential lot in Scottsdale, Rio Verde, North Phoenix area is sold and delivered by the ton. The dirt itself typically runs somewhere between $10 and $18 a ton, sometimes even more. If it's screen fill dirt, it could be substantially more. And it's depending on the source who's delivering it and the current market conditions and fuel prices. Haul costs on top of that depend on how far the pit is from your job, where they're delivering it from. A short pull might add $5 a ton. A longer one can add $10 to $15 a ton or even more. So your local delivered cost per ton can range quite a bit based on where you're building. And those pits run in and out of different quantities of material, so that's always changing. Now, how do you know how many tons you actually need? That number comes from your grading plan. Your civil engineer models your existing lot grade against your target pad elevations and produces cut and fill calculations. The net fill number, how much material needs to be imported, lives in that document. That's not a guess. It's based on actual surveyed data. Now, when I quote a job, I'm working directly from that calculation, adding my compaction shrinkage factor and accounting for pad overdig, which is typically 5 to 10 feet beyond the foundation footprint on all sides, plus the driveway area if that's in the same scope. Now, on a relatively flat Rio Verde lot where the natural grade was close to the target elevation, I've been on jobs where we've imported 400 tons, and I've got some that are 12 and 1,500 tons. On jobs with more grade variation where the pad needed to come up significantly more, that's the 1,200 ton job I'm referring to. Same size homes, very different fill requirements. That's why anyone who gives you a fill estimate without seeing your grading plan, they're really just guessing. As a rough placeholder before you have engineering done, budget somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000 for fill material and delivery on a standard single-family lot in our market. That's not a guess. That's historical data that I've run across in my situations. That's a wide range, but that's honest. Now, once you have the grading plan, that range collapses to a real number. One more thing before we get into the takeaways on this. Fill dirt is not all the same. What goes under your house pad needs to be screen fill dirt or structural fill, processed to remove organic materials and oversized materials that don't compact reliably. This is there's cheaper fill available, pit run, native haul, things like that, and it has its place on a job site, just not under your foundation. Don't let a low number on a bid tempt you into changing that spec. The savings are not worth what you're risking. Here's what I want you to walk away with. Get your grading plan done before you ask anyone for a fill or a grading estimate. That's the only document that produces a real number. Once you have it, talk to somebody who knows how to read it and ask specifically how they're accounting for compaction shrinkage or overdig. If they can't answer those questions clearly, that's information worth having before you sign anything. That's something they should know. The scenario I opened this video with, a contractor standing on a job site, trucks rolling in, numbers not adding up, that's a preventable situation. It gets prevented by doing the math correctly before the job starts. So by understanding what shrinkage factor means and building it into the estimate by not quoting fill dirt quantities off of a square footage and a gut feeling, that makes things a lot more feasible. I've been in construction in Arizona for over 25 years. The guys who run tight jobs aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who do the hard thinking before the work starts, so the work itself goes clean. And trust me, when we started out, we all made a mistake here and there. So if you've gotten a lot in Scottsdale, Rio Verde, North Phoenix, Desert Hills, up in that area, and you want to talk through your grading plan before you start getting any bids, feel free to reach out. Just head to AccuDirt.com, fill out the form actually on the web form. Is the easiest way to do it. That conversation's free, and it'll save you from standing on a job doing math you should have done 3 weeks earlier. And if you haven't seen the video I did on what to do with your lot before you pull a permit, that's a pretty good watch to check out next. I'll link it up below. Hope this helps you out. I'll talk to you soon.